Hello everyone, and welcome to this new episode of the podcast In Shape to Grow, the podcast who bring your health into your business plan. So with this podcast, I interview several entrepreneurs who put their health into the center, at the heart of their business plan, and I hope to inspire you to do the same. In today's episode, I'm very happy to introduce you to Mike Salemi's work and teaching. Mike is a trainer, he's a Czech practitioner, he's a former world champion in kettlebell. He created a complete lifestyle program to teach you how to use kettlebell in your daily activities. Because Mike is more than a trainer. Mike is an amazing human being. I wish I had enough words in English to express and explain how Mike's work and teaching is inspiring me. And I wish that in this interview, you will be inspired by this man, by his work, by his mission. You know, sometimes people can inspire you just by being themselves. Just by sharing what they love, what they are good at. And that's what Mike is doing. So let's discover what Mike is doing for his own routine and what he can teach us to live a better entrepreneurship experience. I hope you're going to enjoy this show and make sure to follow Mike on Instagram for all these amazing movement and demonstration he can do and all this interview he's doing himself. But before that, sit down, relax, and listen to this amazing information he's going to share with us. Hello, Mike. How are you today?
Doing good, brother. Doing good. Being very, very excited to have this conversation with you and honored to be here, my man.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been a few years I follow your work and I really connect with the philosophy and the message. And I'm very happy to have you in this podcast to share your expertise and your wisdom with the community. So do you mind if I come back on a few events in your career and in your life?
Let's get into it. Hell yeah.
Great. So you're from a Sicilian family and working in a marble business, and pretty quickly you studied gymnastics. And you had a chance to train with the Olympic medalist from Bulgaria. But a few years later, by the age of 14, you had your first injury. And I can imagine at 14, when you train hard, having an injury probably was painful physically and mentally. But for you, it was the opportunity to meet someone, a chiropractor, who was also a power lifter. And with this discovery, you started a new career in sport as a power lifter. Can you tell us what happened in your mind as a teenager, going from gymnastics, where you flip everywhere, to a powerlifting sport that is totally different?
Yeah, you couldn't find two sports that are more different than one another, right? Like when you look at what it takes to be successful as a gymnast, like you've got to be exquisite in so many different abilities from body weight strength to flexibility to coordination to balance. I mean, you name it, explosiveness, strength, endurance. Like you've got to be a pretty high level, well-rounded athlete to be a gymnast, especially if you compete on all 6 events as a man. And then in powerlifting, you've got 3 events, but you're talking about base strength. You're talking squat, bench, and deadlift. So I would say the simplicity, like one sport, super complex, develops like your nervous system, super fine-tuned. And then the other one is much more simple, grinding it out. So it's almost like 2 different personalities, 2 different types of relationships with each. And so, but what I will say is for me personally, one of the things that I loved the most about gymnastics was the strength and conditioning days. So I loved even the rings, like more strength-based events. That was just in my nature. Yeah. And so, I mean, that transition was actually really challenging in the sense of, because up until that point, gymnastics was my love. It was my sport. And so when that got taken away, it was like a big part of my identity was gone. And so, I mean, I was training, I was never a high going to the Olympics or anything, but I was putting in the effort. I was training 6 days a week, somewhere between 3 hours minimum per session each day as a kid. And then all of a sudden, after doing that 6 days a week after school, my whole friends, that gets turned off. So it's a complete reorganization of friends, who I am, what I'm doing each day. But I'm grateful because I did find a whole new family in powerlifting, and they really supported me incredibly.
Yes, because as you mentioned, at the age of 14, it's a very important age to continue exercise. And then you had to switch, as you mentioned, from one family, but you found another one. And a year later, you become a world champion in bench press and deadlift in your category. And you started coaching too in your high school. You were responsible for the strength and conditioning programming. And also in college, you were still competing and teaching, and you also started to work in a holistic lifestyle center. So again, you are from a world where you need a lot of strength and a lot of efforts and a lot of sweat, and you start to work in a holistic center. So you switch again from, of course, you were still competing, and you started kettlebells and Bulgarian bag probably at the same time, but what did attract you to work with the holistic center?
I think, well, there was two things that really attracted me there. One was one of my teammates in the powerlifting gym was best friends with the owner. And so there was that introduction and that level of trust. His name was Ed Barnes, and he told me, he's like, man, you're gonna love the owner of this gym, my buddy Brian. I grew up with him. He's right up your alley. I think you guys could learn a lot from each other. So there was already that introduction and that kind of level of respect going in. But I think honestly, the biggest thing, brother, was just curiosity. Like knowing as an athlete, just anything that I could do to improve my performance, anything outside of taking steroids, I would have done it. So when I went there, it was a whole new world, from learning about how to balance energy, like working in nutrition, which I was doing the best I could, but the books that I had access to at 17, 18, obviously the internet was around, but access to good information as we know it today just wasn't there. So I was eating, I wasn't eating a bunch of sweets. I wasn't having like fast food, but I was sensitive to gluten, but I was eating just white breads or wheat bread sandwiches and egg whites and Kraft cheese, fat-free stuff. So, Brian, the owner of that gym, just completely opened my mind. We started doing lab testing. We started doing muscle testing. And I was just blown away at this whole new world, that not only could I start competing at a higher level, but more importantly, which is what I'm super passionate about today, is I can feel better while doing it. Like, it doesn't have to be high level performance, whether it's in sport or out, and feeling like shit. I can actually reach both. And for me at that age, I was like, whoa. And I had no idea what the next 10 years, 15 years was going to hold. And it's continually evolving. But for me, that was such a big aha, and that curiosity was just filled in that environment.
And we're gonna come back on this, because you mentioned a few really important things that I'd like to share with you later on. Because at that time you were still competing, but around 2007, 2009, the world economy crashed, and you had to switch in your career from an athlete to the family business. I mentioned earlier that you are from a Sicilian family. One of my best friends is from Sicilia. So I know, even if you are a little bit approaching the family, you are in the family. So of course, when you are from the family, you have a lot of emotions and a lot of things together, and you decided to have the family business, and you started some kind of learning too, because after a few years, you were still competing, but you enjoyed yourself, and you were feeling your emotional going up and down, and you weren't feeling at the right place. That's after this period that you met Paul Check, after a bad injury in your shoulders, and you really dig into the work in and the whole holistic approach that you started to learn at the Holistic Center. And you did this amazing exercise, a crystal ball exercise. Can you tell us what happened when you did this exercise?
Oh, I remember, man, I haven't thought about this in a little bit. So the crystal ball was an exercise that Paul invited me to do. And so basically what was happening is when I first started working with Paul, I was in the family business. And even though there was many beautiful aspects of it, it definitely wasn't my calling. And so what happened is as each year started going, I started honestly getting just parts of me much more unhappy. And I wanted to be in personal training, fitness, teaching, presenting, and health and wellness. But there was that big disconnect there. I'm doing a job for, in my experience, a lot of it for my family, for me too, but for my family. But then also I've got this passion, this dream that drives me so much. And so Paul sat me down one day and basically asked me, he goes, Mike, if you picture your life like a crystal ball and you were to look into that crystal ball in 6 months, if you're in the exact same spot as where you are now, what's going to happen? And then I sat with that. I said, oh, something to the effect of like, well, I'm still going to be really unhappy. I'm going to probably just feel worse about myself, start, getting angry more, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I recall correctly, he goes like, what's going to happen in 1 year down the road or 2 years down the road? Envision your life, feel into that. What's going to happen? And I just knew viscerally, didn't even have to say it. It was like a feeling of just sickness in my body. And it was like, oh shit, if I continue on this path, if I'm exactly where I am in 1 year, in 2 year, in 3 year, I'm absolutely going to get sick. And that was like the I don't know if it was the catalyst is the right word, but that was the switch. That was the switch in my mind that was like, okay, enough's enough, Mike. Like we need to do something different. You need to do something different for yourself. Otherwise, you're going to get sick and you're going to do exactly what you coach and teach people not to do, basically.
But we are talking at that time about you as a top athlete still. So
Oh
you
yeah.
can visualize yourself sick in a few years down the road. But at that time, you're injured, but you are a top athlete. So it's very important, I think, in this conversation that people sometimes see athletes like, oh, they have the perfect health. But no, because the emotional health wasn't there, and your body was telling you that no, it's something wrong because the shoulders was painful. And so at that time you switch, and within a few years you get more involved in your own path by less competition, more play, more coaching, more teaching, and you started to teach kettlebells, right? That's the first program you started to teach.
The Kettlebell Lifestyle was the first online program that I started doing. And I would say that was the main, I was teaching a lot of different modalities, but that was like the first big education system that I developed. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, because you were world champion in 2017. Was it after your injury or was it before?
No, it was after it was rehabbed, after working with Paul for about 2.5 years. That's when I came back and was able to get it. Yeah.
Get this level, but still you knew that you need to switch from competitions to more teaching, more playful, more play, as you mentioned. I remember in a very interesting podcast with Wellness Forces back in 2019, I think. So there you started to do more teaching, more inner work still.
More what? I'm sorry?
More inner work for yourself. You were still in the path of looking after the best way to express yourself. And if I remember, the main missions you want to share into your program and your teaching is to support the people who want to work at a high level, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the pull to inner work has just been continually increasing, I would say, for me. I mean, the outer work, the physical movement side, absolutely is like my roots is the root of the tree, but above the roots is the heart, and then above the roots are the branches and the mind. And so what I'm really learning and stepping into and still like just so curious is I've realized so much that high performance, whether it's in sport, whether it's in business, is so much more than, let's say, the sets, the reps, the loads, the tempos, that sort of stuff. It's so much more about building the whole person. And that inner work component, that is like one of the biggest keys that I've really realized in terms of reaching high levels of performance, but doing so for the long term. Like when you were saying athletes, people look at them, they think they're really healthy. Well, yes and no, right? Like athletes in my experience, myself, using myself as an example, we're really good specialists. Like we're really good at like this one thing oftentimes, powerlifting, kettlebell sport, this one skill. But when you look at like the whole other picture of someone's life, and that's really what Paul Chek had really brought into my awareness. It's like, man, I was going to him to rehab an injury and get back on the platform. But what I ended up leaving with was just, it was 80% managing lifestyle, managing energy, managing my mind, getting in touch with what I really want, my core values. And then the other, was the training and the technique.
Yeah, that's why your program is Kettlebell Lifestyle Program, and you put a lot of efforts and knowledge in this program. It's not just swinging, like I said before the interview. As a coach, when I saw the kettlebell for the first time, I said, "Oh, I can do it." But then I started to practice. I said, "Well, I need to train." But then I discovered your work, and the Kettlebell Lifestyle Program is really going into deep knowledge about working in parallel to the kettlebell techniques, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is like one of the biggest components that I think anybody, especially if you're an entrepreneur, it's like, here's the thing, anybody can, I hear this all the time from people in business, entrepreneurs especially, they just like want to literally treat their workouts like they treat their business. Grind, grind, grind. They want to just get pummeled in the gym and no warm up, nothing. I got a buddy of mine who's a high level business guy. He's actually a consultant that I've worked with and hired. And he's like, man, Mike, you're not going to believe what happened today. I go, what's up, buddy? And he goes, oh, I was just in the gym and I just put 2 plates on the bar and just went right into the deadlift and I tweaked my back. And now I'm in pain when I'm sitting all day. And I was like, what were you doing? Just no, like, what are you thinking? Like, oh,
Yeah.
I just wanted to lift some weight. And it requires a complete shift of perspective in terms of like, we've got to look at these other aspects, the warm up, the working in, the breath work. Those are the things truly that business people and people in general really need. But it just like, it's creating this little frame shift, and kettlebell lifestyle is all about that.
Yeah, exactly. And I had this email this morning from you with this retreat at the end of the month, where this is what I mentioned during the first minutes of this interview. You were really talking about friendship. That's friendship is a common point in different moment of your career, and family compound, and getting together and being vulnerable too. So this retreat at the end of the month, can you explain a little bit what it is? Because for us as European, it's something that we see from the North America, but usually it's either, and it's something I had during my career, either you're a strength coach, either you do yoga and you do Tai Chi, and that. But if I do Tai Chi with people from the Tai Chi world, oh, I'm the sport guy. And if I do Tai Chi in the middle of the fitness room, oh, I'm this bizarre guy. But in the Kettlebell Lifestyle Program, and also in the Men of Movement retreat that you're going to organize at the end of the month, you mix both. So can you explain a little bit what's
Yeah.
behind this?
Thank you so much for asking, because that right now, I mean, kettlebell lifestyle and men of movement are really just the 2 things right now that I'm most passionate about. And I think one of the things when I observe like my career or just the people that I've connected with and supported, and what I've really realized is one of my roles in life is, and what I really enjoy is being this bridge. So taking people from the strength world who maybe only have been exposed to what they've been doing in the gym, and have a little bit of curiosity in terms of like, they know there's something more. Maybe they're a little unhappy with what they're doing, or they just want more for themselves. And so to be that bridge and create this safe path to like walk them aside, not into, what I get a lot of joy out of is breaking down intimidation. When people come in, even in the movement world, they see a kettlebell, they see a Bulgarian bag, and they're like, man, I don't know if I can do that. That's a little bit scary. So I love creating a safe space for learning, for sharing, for growing. And so my goal was really with this retreat and all my stuff is to be that bridge of someone who, wants to get walked along this path. It's not like a, you know, out there with men's work today, what I tend to see, and more power to them if someone needs this and wants this, is more like a lot of them tend to be like Navy SEAL type training. Like, we're gonna beat you down. And, you know, that's an initiation, and, you know, which is important. That didn't really attract me, you know. And then there's ones that are, which can be beautiful too, very big on the plant medicines route, and that can be an initiation as well. What I really love doing is bridging both, bridging the movement side, which is very accessible to people. People understand movement. People know it's important. You can't, I was just doing this meditation outside before our call, and it was this embodiment movement meditation from a teacher that I started to work with. And I just from the act of 20 minutes of moving outside bare feet on the grass, I felt so alive. And so I want to bring this form of movement, this form of expression, this form of a safe space for men to be exactly as they are. No bullshit. We all got stuff that's going on in our life. And I truly do believe that men need men. And so this retreat, it's an integration of outer and inner work. And it's truly to create a safe space for men to be vulnerable, to heal, to grow, to move, to share. And that's really what the whole retreat's about.
Yeah, I really connect with the message I read this morning, and I thought it was funny to read this email on the day I was having you on the podcast. Do you think you're going to do it regularly, or is it a first event?
So this is my first, I've assisted other men's retreat. This is my first big men's retreat. And so this is, I feel called to this work very strongly.
Okay.
And I don't know what it's gonna hold, but a part of it is, if it's calling in my heart, I know I've got to at least give it a try. And so far the response has been good. I think we've got 14, 15 people already signed up. So, you know, it looks like already a great group. We've got some amazing human beings, people with some who have been in the self-development world for a bit, and then people that are just getting started. And we all learn from each other. So my plan, yes, is to do hopefully 2 to 3 a year.
Nice.
But I'm going to step into it and see what it holds, and I'll let the group decide.
Yeah, great.
Awesome. Or help me decide. Yeah.
Awesome. So this is what you do today with these two big projects. So as an entrepreneur now, I'd like to know, what is your routine today? Not as an athlete, of course. You probably train, and we can see amazing videos of Bulgarian bag and all the move you do. It's very pleasant. I'm very sensitive to the beauty of movement also, and we can probably do some parallel between the gymnastic movement and what you do when you do kettlebells and Bulgarian bag. It's very nice. But as an entrepreneur, because you travel a lot, there's a lot of pressure, of course. The Kettlebell Lifestyle Program, I remember you saying that it took a lot of energy to put everything together. So what do you do as an entrepreneur to manage yourself based on the 4 doctors of Paul Chek?
Man, it is, and I'll be super transparent and super honest. I don't know if I would have done things differently too much, but if someone had told me really how challenging being an entrepreneur is and what it takes, I had no idea. And I'm continually humbled and shocked and surprised. It is as rigorous, as demanding as the most elite sports that I've competed in. It requires so much discipline, commitment, perseverance. And so here's what I've really learned, and I'm continually learning right now. When I was an athlete, you know, I competed at a high level, but I broke my body down. And through those injuries, I learned new ways to train, new ways to balance. But my mode, especially for so long in the early years, was the grind. I have to grind in order to get this result. And then over time, I started learning that balance. It's taken me honestly a long time, and I've been full on in this industry now for about almost 5 years since I left my family business. And dude, it's been such a learning experience, because that pattern of the grind, even though I learned how to kind of heal that in sports, I'm still learning how to heal that in business, because I approached entrepreneurship as in the exact same way. I need to grind in order to make money, in order to do this. And it's been something I've really sat with. I'm like, how did I learn that in sport, and I'm having so much difficulty doing it now. But it's because that pattern, that root of facilitation is so ingrained in me. My father's Sicilian, came from nothing, made his own life. So I've got these patterns that are so deep. So for me, it continually requires so much self-awareness to know when I'm pushing it too hard. And sometimes I do. Sometimes, it's hard to know. There is no perfect balance. And sometimes we figure that out by dancing with the extremes, by pushing our threshold, by pushing our capacity and knowing, oh man, I was pushing it really hard. I need to back off. I need to do more introspective work, more inner work. So I'm still very much learning. But the one thing that I will say is it requires extreme discipline to be very mindful about not only like when I'm going to sleep, when I'm going to wake up, and what I'm going to do right when I wake up and what I'm going to do right when I go to sleep. Those for me are two very, very big and important times. And, one of the biggest things for me is removing distraction. For me, distraction is like the killer of productivity, is the killer of just regenerating energy. And today, when there's so much media and the social stuff, like just turning off your phone for the first 30 minutes to an hour in the morning and turning off your phone for the last 2 to 3 hours in the evening, just that has been so helpful for me. So for me, it's about removing distraction, being disciplined, and then continually as best as I can developing that self-awareness.
Yeah, because Dr. Quiet is very, very hard to follow these days. And as you mentioned, the distraction is very high. As a teacher myself, it's the most biggest issue I have to teach to the future coach is to help their clients to calm down and to stop some distractions. And I didn't have to teach that 10 years ago or 20 years ago, but these last few years, it has been very hard to share this message. And I'm glad that this is the first things you mentioned, the first things you do in the morning and the last things you do at night for your circadian rhythm is very important as an entrepreneur. And it's true that as an entrepreneur, there's always something to do.
There's always.
So if we don't have self-discipline, and it's amazing because as I mentioned earlier with your crystal ball exercise, even as an athlete, you could see yourself sick in a few years if you don't switch. But today, even with your discipline in sport, you know that if you don't have this discipline in your daily routine, you can burn out too. Because I remember one of your interview where you said that if you teach 2 days in a row, you need to recover afterwards. Because even if physically it's not as demanding in other activities, sharing and teaching for 2 days takes a lot of energy.
It certainly does. And even today, like when I realize it's interesting, there's certain tasks that require a lot of energy and there's certain tasks that don't require a lot. The movement stuff, yes, it's physically taxing for me, but my body's pretty well conditioned and I've laid down enough reps and I know how to manage my energy when I'm teaching. The big thing is like when I'm giving a new presentation or to a new group or I'm giving it to a new audience, there's that nervousness. There's a lot of emotional energy, emotional and mental buildup. And I found like even if I'm presenting for 30 minutes, but it's on a new topic to a new group, and that will drain me more than 3 days of movement teaching 9 hours a day. So it's sometimes less about like the amount of tasks sometimes, and it's more about the emotional and the mental buildup of that task. So sometimes if it's a 30-minute talk to like a new college that I'm trying to present to, I'll make sure as best as I can that I literally take the rest of the day off or allow myself to sleep in or book a float, because I know that that 30 minutes is going to require every ounce of my presence, of my focus, and it's going to necessitate that equal exchange of refilling the tank.
Refilling the tank. And do you prepare yourself before too? Do you have any routine when you have this kind of presentation? What do you do?
That's such a good question. So it's continually evolving. Right now, the biggest things that I've changed or have been adding in is breath work before my presentations. And it's something that I really didn't do before. I knew it was important. Sometimes I would do a little movement before, whether it's mobility or a very light workout, not because I wanted to work out, but because I wanted to energize and get more grounded in my body. And for me, I think getting grounded, food can do that really well, and movement can do that really well, and breath. But the thing with food is, for me, when I present, I definitely want to be satisfied on food, but if I eat like a bunch of meat before a presentation, I feel like slow and heavy. So usually before I eat pretty light, like I'll just have just a little snack. But for me, just moving my physical body, and then the breath work lately has been just probably the biggest thing. And I'm not talking like, for me, I'm not talking like a Wim Hof type, very aggressive, like charging, that type of breath. I'm really looking, how can I calm my nervous system as much as possible? And so for me, that's equated with not learning, but practicing breathing light. So breathing in almost so much that the breath coming in is imperceptible, and then exiting the nostrils, it's almost imperceptible. So breathing nice and light, very slow, breathing in and out through the belly, even putting my hands right on the side of my ribs. So on the inhale, the ribs expand. On the exhale, they come back. And I'll do some other things as well, but just that exercise for 10 to 20 minutes before, whether it's laying down or seated, just gets me so much more in my body, so much calmer, so much more present, so that when I'm on stage, or if I am presenting, I'm tuning in so much more to the authentic inspiration as it's coming up, because I'm not trying to think so much. Like, I know the information that I'm trying to present. Like, it's like I've studied it, I've rehearsed it, whatever it is, I practice it. Now it's actually about turning off that script and tuning into the actual students or the people in front. And in order to do that, we have to be calm enough, we have to be in our body enough. And for me, just 20 minutes of breathing, or 10 minutes. And I could do that even if I was, let's say, seated if there was presenters before me. I could do it at my desk, I could do it in my chair. I don't need to go to a gym and do the movement stuff, but just the breath has been huge for me.
It's amazing what you share with us, because as a top athlete, you still do some movement and breathing before a presentation, because even if you are a superhuman, for some people, for a presentation where you have a lot of energy to bring and to inspire your audience, you prepare yourself. And I think it's very important to share with entrepreneurs who are not in the sport market or area, that the body needs to be prepared to be good at what they do. And also you need to be in tune with that, because you mentioned what works and what doesn't work, and you just said it's always evolving. So you need to be able to know what's working the best with me. Mike, what would you advise to entrepreneurs who may go through emotional roller coaster, because you know what it is, you have been through some hard time? What would you advise to entrepreneurs who feel today that they are completely out of energy, they are demotivated? What would be your first advice?
Man, probably my first piece of advice would be to focus back on the simple things that are going to give you the highest level of return, specifically as it relates to healing the body. The mind is contained within the body. The heart is contained within the body. The more physically unfit, sick, unhealthy that you are, it's really hard to get motivated. It's super challenging. And so what I've seen to be the most powerful things are very simple. And I'll give some actual practical advice too. So, and this will build on what we talked about earlier. The first thing in the morning, the first thing that you can do, don't look at your cell phone. Literally get up. You can, if you want, brush your teeth, drink some water. 2 glasses is fine. That's good. Get your body hydrated after just being dehydrated all night. But literally get the water in and immediately go outside for a walk. Immediately a 20 to a 40-minute walk outside with no cell phone after you've been hydrated One, I think one of the most healthy things to balance our nervous system, our body, to get us more in our body, is being outdoors. If all we've been is inside in this artificial environment with computers and screens and all this input coming in, just literally just the act of being able to go outside and see a tree, or just even if there's no trees around you, just being able to look 30, 50, 100 feet, 1,000 feet, whatever it is in front of you, as opposed to this screen that's 6 inches from your face, is just a complete new awareness for your whole body. So being outside, incredibly grounding, incredibly nourishing. I think the nourishment that we can get from our environment is probably one of the biggest missing things that are just draining people's energy if they're not getting outside. Walking is super simple, requires no technique.
No money, no techniques, anything yet.
No technique. Anybody can do it. And it's honestly, when you look at like the oldest, healthiest people in the world, what's the one exercise they still do? And it's walking. It's one of the primal movement patterns that we need to do to be just healthy as human beings. It's charging, it's energizing, it's a working in exercise. So getting outside, hydrating, removing the distractions of the cell phone, walking to get a pumping of the lymphatic fluid, pumping of your energy. And then while you're walking, keep your mouth shut. Actually, keep your mouth closed all day. Literally just the act of breathing in and out through the nose. There's parasympathetic nerve endings in the nose. So when you inhale through the nose, you automatically excite the part of your nervous system responsible for the calming mechanism, the rest, the repair, the creative side of your body. So just by breathing in and out through your nose, let alone a whole host of other benefits, just doing 20 to 40 minutes of active walking nasal breathing. And in the beginning, if you're used to breathing in and out through your mouth, for anyone listening, it's going to be probably really tough. And you may feel the sensation of air hunger, like a desire for air, like you can't get enough air. That's not a bad thing. To anybody who's listening, that's actually a good thing. When you've got that sensation of air hunger, you're actually building CO2, carbon dioxide, in the lungs, in the blood. And that's going to make that's going to make the availability of oxygen to get released into the tissue and into the body so much more accessible. So don't be afraid if you got the air hunger. That's actually a good thing. Breathe light, breathe deep, breathe calm, go for the walk. And just that 1 hour in the morning or 40 minutes, if people did that every single day, or at least 3 times a week, but again, it's simple, it's free, anybody can do it.
Yeah.
That will go so far to motivation, to productivity, to happiness. So that's one of the biggest, simplest things that I can suggest.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, because I'm very in tune with what you said, and it's true. That's easy. That's free, and you can do it. You can do it every day, and within a week, you can feel the difference. The only thing you need to do is to do it. The self-discipline to say, okay, I'm tired. I have a lack of motivations. I'm working too much. Okay, I'm going to do this for a week, and let's see what happens.
If they did it, like you said, if someone did it for 1 week daily, a 20-minute walk minimum outside, in 1 week, I will guarantee you there will be a shift. How big, I don't know, but a shift will be created. Breath, movement, hydration, free from distraction. You're basically giving your body the real food it needs. The real nourishment is right there. The social media, the crazy news, the challenges at work, that's all stuff that is like, that's the stuff, the stress that we don't really need. So let's start the day and actually do so in a way that's actually supportive to the life we want to live.
Yes, and if we have some doubt, we can always do the crystal ball exercise and think, okay, what if I don't do anything for a week? How am I going to feel the next week? And okay, let's try this exercise every morning. Awesome. Thank you very much, Mike. So I'd like to finish this interview with you, Mike, because you also have another quality. You're also certified in Germeau medicine. So plant medicine is different everywhere. I know that Kambo is not really a plant, but you can explain it in a few minutes. But we know today that we have a lot of scientific data on plant medicine and traditional medicine. So as a Kambo practitioner, can you explain in a few sentences what is Kambo and how it can really help someone, an entrepreneur, for example, who go through a difficult time, to go a little bit further in his self-development or self-discovery?
Sure. I mean, just like you said, it's not really classically a plant medicine. So it's actually, so Kambo comes from a secretion from a particular type of tree frog. This type of medicine has been used for thousands of years in South America, in the Amazon, and now it's made its way outside to the rest of the world. But the interesting thing, one of the biggest differences from, let's say, other medicines is it's not psychoactive. So someone will not be like transported out of their body. It's a very, at least in my experience, it's a very in the body medicine. You know, you really, it's primarily used as a cleansing agent, as a detoxification agent. There are a bunch of physical benefits that can happen. It's said to balance the immune system or help support that. Tribes would also use it to and this is where I think it would be very helpful to entrepreneurs, of course, for the cleansing side, the immune system side, but tribes would also use it to help them push through periods of what they would call panema, which is heavy, dark, stuck energy. So for entrepreneurs that are being challenged in motivation, a lot of stuff's going on, negative thinking, all that sort of stuff, it can help. What I've seen in my experience, it can help someone push through that. So if you feel stuck, it can help kind of give you a little bit of a push, because there's with this type of medicine, I would say of all the themes that it works really well with is the theme of letting go. There's a lot of purging that can happen. So vomiting, the lower bowel purge, laughing, crying, shaking, sweating. It's fairly short, you know, usually 20 to 40 minutes, but the purging that can happen can be pretty significant. It's not the most comfortable medicine. It's actually pretty intense, or really intense. But I really do believe, in my experience, there is so much, when done safely and when done responsibly, not just Kambo, but just entering into discomfort is something that so many of us can benefit from, because what's on the other side of that is that release, is that letting go of the stories, the beliefs, the emotions, the physical crap that we've been holding on to. What's on the other side of that oftentimes is greater level of self-respect, of confidence, of empowerment. Because if we've never really tested ourselves, or we've never really put ourselves in an uncomfortable situation, it's really hard to know who we are, what we want, what we stand for. But what I've seen in these experiences, and I've been so humbled and honored to be able to hold space for people, is I always say it's opened my heart, it's opened my mind to so much, the vastness of the human experience and what people are what's going on in their life, what they're holding on to, what I'm holding on to. And so I think it's not for everybody. And so anyone who might be interested, make sure you vet out your practitioner, you interview them, you feel really good about them. But if it is right for you, and you are curious, I've seen it really be able to help and support a lot of people out there. But again, it is intense. So just know that.
Yeah, it's intense. You need to be aware of it and to prepare yourself. But what kind of people, because you have been a practitioner or a certified Kambo practitioner for some years now, but what kind of people are coming? Is it all kind of people, or is it specific to some?
The range couldn't be wider. Like I've got, athletes, I've got people with physical, injuries that are looking to, there's no promises or guarantees with any of this stuff. But in terms of, people will bring whatever intention that they have. And I truly do believe with honestly, the men's retreat, with doing Kettlebell Lifestyle, with our work, the intention component, the intention and the integration after are two of the most, what you do before, what you do after are two of the most important things to actually get something of real value after. Because otherwise what happens is, you might get some benefit from Kambo or from Kettlebell Lifestyle or from the retreat. you'll probably have a really good experience. You'll experience some release, some opening. But the key is if you can go in with a super, be open to whatever is going to happen in the experience, but go into it bring in some type of intention from your heart about why you're doing it, what you want to get out of it, how you want your life to be different. Bring that intention to the work. And then after the work, then actually take inventory. How do you feel right now? What's different? What's changed? What are you willing to do next? What are you going to take action on to actually integrate these things into your life? And if you can do that, I mean, I think with that being said, it applies to anybody. So whether you're an athlete, you got physical stuff, you're in a relationship, you're experiencing a relationship challenge, you feel stuck in your work, whatever your unique intention is, you can bring that and really just ask the spirit of Combo to help you. Ask the spirit of Combo to support you. And it might sound woo-woo or whatever, but if you believe it and you bring that intention, then I've seen and I've experienced some incredible shifts to happen with that intention.
Yeah, I believe you, and I experienced it a few times. And as you mentioned, it's not for everyone. Like any kind of technique or any kind of method is not for everyone. But as you mentioned, if you have an intention and you want to grow and see what's happening when you do this experience, you will grow. You will find something after that. Because if we summarize the interview and the few exchanges we had for the last few minutes, we were talking about strength, and we were talking about working in, breathing, Combo, discipline. But I think all these elements are very important for the entrepreneur, because being an entrepreneur, usually you don't do it like this. You choose, you have a product, or you have something you believe in it. So you spend a lot of time, a lot of energy. So I think, and I want to have your point of view on this. When you involve so much energy into a project, you need to put a lot of tools to succeed. You not have just to look at the data and the communications and the marketing and dream that is going to go, because the whole energy you share in any area is very important. So if you work on yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, of course, you're going to have another experience in your entrepreneurship, right?
So true, man. When you were saying that, one thing that came up is like with this inner work, one of the things with the healing work, with this sort of stuff that I've really seen, and I think this will really make sense for entrepreneurs, is it can have the ability to create space, to create expansion, to create greater capacity. Because like what you said is so true. As an entrepreneur, man, it is challenging. It is one of the most challenging things I've ever engaged in. You have to know so many different aspects of business. I mean, just like the body is a system of systems, any business without finance focus or without a marketing focus or without the sales focus is not going to be a well-functioning business for a long time, maybe in the short term. So with all that stuff, the more that we can increase our capacity, we can handle conceptually in our body, in our mind, we can handle so much more. And so these things, whether it's the walk in the morning, whether it's the breathing, whether it's something like Combo, whether it's doing some type of healing work, this is in fact creating greater space, greater capacity to not feel overwhelmed so much. What I've seen is people have got, their bodies are so sick, they're so overloaded at work, they've got challenging relationships, and literally the space that they can hold, let alone for another person, but within themselves, is so finite, is so small, because they've got so much on them. It literally feels like the world is closing in. But when you do things like what we've just said, those simple things just start getting lighter. You start letting go of some baggage that you don't need to hold on to. And then all of a sudden you've got the space to be more creative, to do more things that you love doing. So if anything, what we're talking about will give entrepreneurs the ability to ultimately be more productive, and hopefully what I hope is more discerning about what they choose to put their time and energy in, because it is limited. We have a limited amount of energy, and even though we're increasing our capacity, there's only so much juice. And anyone who doesn't believe that will be burnt out pretty quick.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And your whole career, I mean, you went through different challenges that show you your path. But as you mentioned, you started to work on yourself a long time ago, and each time you did something, it will allow you to fine tune where you have the most energy from your work, but also where you can share. Something I mentioned every time I see Instagram from you, it's you smile so much on the screen. We just have to stop and see what is he talking about, because I need to stop. But of course, if someone is tired and do a very quick video because he needs to be on the social media, it's not going to work very long. So it's very important to have this energy for self and to share. So thank you very much, Mike, for everything you share. I'm very grateful for having you in my podcast. So if people want to follow you, they can follow you on Instagram.
Instagram is great, which is just, my handle is mike.salemi. So that's a great place to find me. Okay.
But also on Facebook, and you also have a website, and I'm going to share all these details below this video. But Instagram is probably where you spend the most of your time on social media, or
yeah, Instagram's, I don't use Facebook. I'm trying to kind of get off of Facebook. So, but Instagram's great for right now. And then if anybody has any questions, like with the programs or anything that we talked about, just reach out. You know, a program like Kettlebell Lifestyle, there's 2 different levels. And what I always say is, like, there's people, we've got, I think, people from 25 countries doing it. I've got friends' dads that are doing it, like 60s and 70-year-old. You don't need to do everything. There's morning routines, there's breath work, there's working in. You could just do the mobility. So even though it's a kettlebell program, it's truly to support a healthier lifestyle and do everything that we talked about. So if someone has questions on that, feel free to reach out, and I'd be more than happy to support them, or just they can check out the program too.
Awesome, Mike. Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here for this monthly podcast in English. You have one podcast every week in French and one podcast every month in English. So I'll give you, see you next week for the next French one, and next month for the next English one. Thank you, Mike, for your time. Take care for all of you, and see you next time.
Thank you so much for having me. This was super fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.